Right? If you have to be able to see it, because you got to be able to project yourself out into it. If you don't project yourself out into what you want, then you will never get there.
We either buy into ideas that limit ideas of who we are and what we can do, or we see that we can only have an experience of ourselves through our thinking.
So when you feel something from someone, either a good vibe or a bad vibe, you're not feeling their thoughts. You're actually feeling their heart. And so
the power to decide what to do with what I've been told lies with me, and the responsibility for what I do with it also lies with me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Presence Posse Roundtable Talks. My name is Miriam Siegel, and I'm joined today by Jan Harte, Sadhu Khalsa, and Malcolm Free. Today's theme is resilience, and we actually had resilience as a topic last week. And we decided it's such a big topic, there's so many things we can say, and it's also so important, we decided to have a part 2. So I'm going to start with you, Jan, if you guys don't mind presenting yourself for people who may not have met you before. And even if they have, it's nice to know a little bit more about you. Jan, you were on the conversation last week, so I thought I'd start with you. How about letting people know who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Miriam. And I'm thrilled to be back again with the posse talking about resilience. It is a big topic, and we could probably do 10 more sessions on it, but we won't just yet. So I'm Jan Harte, and I'm a human resources and mind mentor. So I've spent all of my career working in human resources, and I guess in the last 5 or so years trained as a mind mentor and in the mental health space. And now I spend my time integrating mind and HR in my business and working with people in organizations primarily, specializing in people that suffer from burnout. So that's me. Yeah. So
Thank
resilience
you.
is big in that space.
Yeah, really. Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you today. And Sadhu, how about you?
hello there, everybody. Thank you, Miriam. Let's see. I consider myself a heart intelligence ambassador. There's coaching and consulting along with that, but an ambassador because I feel that each and every human being is able to continually kind of experience and embody and expand into greater and greater potential, emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So because I believe that, I do everything I can to study that and develop or discover or share tools and resources to help people do exactly that, excel in their life more and more every day in every way through the intelligence of our heart.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much, Sadhu. And Coach Malcolm Free.
Hey, everybody. What's going on? Coach Free here. I am a neuro coach, health coach. I'm also a speaker. And what I do is I use neuroscience and health coaching strategies to help people identify the imbalances of their life and then also help them to find the balance within their lives. That's about it.
That's about it. That's a big deal. And I'm Miriam Siegel, and I am formerly a psychotherapist. What does that mean? The way I look at psychotherapy is I use whatever works for you. I'm actually trained in music therapy, in expressive arts therapy, in EMDR, craniosacral therapy. I do interpersonal mindfulness, also relational mindfulness. So I work a lot with any kind of relationship at all and being present in that. I work with motivation, and I did some research on how people can get the most out of their therapy and coaching sessions. So yeah, because there's always something to learn, and there's always something we can do better. So enough about me. Let's get to it. And resilience. I actually thought I was going to dive in. I'm going to actually say something about, in case, because I know that we've got some people on here, or some people who said they were going to come, who don't have English necessarily as their first language. So I'm just going to mention that I found a dictionary definition of resilience as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, and the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. So that's kind of the way the dictionaries define resilience. But I'm going to let you guys ponder that. I actually want to go straight to Malcolm and Jan, because after the talk last week, Malcolm, you posted on your Facebook profile, just because a person chooses to be silent, opposed to debating and arguing, doesn't mean blank. And then Jan answered, doesn't mean anything other than what you make it mean. Which I thought was a wonderful answer. And I also thought it tied into the theme of resilience.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
Right. And I'm very happy that you say that. So Jan, elaborate.
I will. I suppose two things that are key to me in all the work I do are balance and harmony. So all the work I do is about bringing balance and harmony for people. And where thought comes into that is that we can use the gift of thought to bring ourselves into balance and harmony, and well-being and resilience and anything else, or we can use it to take ourselves away. So we can create nightmares, daymares, or we can create beautiful things for ourselves with our thought. The balance and harmony piece comes in, and I guess this was from my own experience of burnout, Miriam. I had lost balance and harmony, essentially, in that I had come to rely entirely on my intellect, on my cognitive machinery, and I had forgotten who I was. I had forgotten that there was a whole other being, a whole other part to me. And I guess I knew it when I was very young and got conditioned and programmed out of it. And then when it was brought back into my lived experience and into my radar, it just changed everything for me. As soon as I tapped back into my spiritual nature and allowed myself to operate from a place of organic thought that comes from the greater intelligence of life and is downloaded into us, rather than trying to create clumsy scenarios with my cognitive machinery, I suddenly came back into balance. And there was suddenly a lot more harmony in my life and in my body, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I suddenly became a whole being again, human and spiritual. And I was able to use the gift of thought then in a very different way, because I was able to, as Sadhu always says, we get quiet, we get present. And the only reason we never show up as our best selves or as our resilient selves is because we're not present. So when we slow down and come back home into ourselves and be present with ourselves, that's when we can tap into the spiritual side of our nature more easily. And we hear the messages and the wisdom and the organic thought that comes through for us. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Well, it was Malcolm's original question, but it's sort of, tying it into resilience. Thank you very much. I noticed, Sadhu, you put your hand up. Did I see that correctly?
No, that was me licking my finger and touching
That was you licking your finger. Okay, well,
I
hope it was good.
Her answer was so hot, it was making a sizzle.
Ooh, I like that. Malcolm, do you want to get in on it? Since you're the one who posted the original, we made the original post, do you want to comment anything on what Jan said?
I mean, what she said as far as, balance and all of that, man, when it comes to being resilient or whatever the case is, man, it's finding balance, not just a single balance. You have to find balance in mind, balance in heart, balance in, in thought, balance in, your physical being, balance in your social life. You got to find balance in these areas. And, when you're dealing with resiliency or being resilient, right? Resilient is also, you have to find balance in these areas, right? You have to find balance, within yourself. You have to find, and once again, we can go back to what Sadhu said, is get quiet. Just stop. I think it was, can't remember who it was. I think it was Ian, right? Just stop, right? Get quiet. And, and start focusing on, okay, where am I at, right? Once again, where am I at? Identifying where you are, and then identifying where you are in that situation. So are you off balance? Are you balanced with it, or what's going on? So all of that has to do with being resilient. But, at the end of the day, it's still about finding balance, right? Just finding balance within yourself to where you can move forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we're the Presence Posse. So when I think of presence in regard to resilience and what I just heard you say, when we start with just stopping and noticing who am I right now? What's it like to be me right now? And because the only answer I can really get about where I need to go, like what's happening with me and where I need to go, what I need to do with what's happening with me and around me, is to be able to be in the moment with myself right now and sort of check in. Because a lot of people can give advice about what I need to do and how I need to find that bouncing back and strengthen my resilience muscle and all of that. But if I don't feel into myself, if I don't know what's really going on with me, it's kind of hard to make a good informed decision on how to take care of myself and what I need to do to bounce back.
Right. And you look at, you look at the 3 stages, right? You got your primitive state of mind, you got your emotional state, and then you have your intellectual state. At any given moment, you should be able to identify where you are, right? Am I making an emotional decision? Am I making a primitive decision from, my fight or flight mode, right? And once you've identified that, now you can make the adjustments, right? You got to be willing to make the adjustments, or, in order to get to that intellectual part where you make a good decision. But sometimes we make bad decisions, which affect our resiliency, just off of emotions or just off of our primitive fear state or whatever the case is.
Yeah. Sadhu, you're the Harte guy. How does Harte come into this?
Well, before I answer that, Miriam, I just want to kind of check in and add 2 cents here about if I think I find it important that this is just a suggestion or my 2 cents for anybody to get a good handle on how you define yourself, And so, for instance, if one defines themselves as a husband or a father or a mother, or a CEO or a health coach or, a struggler or whatever it is, then that's going to really kind of determine the unfolding of that story relative to that identity that one has identified oneself with. And so I kind of feel maybe with either self-reflection or introspection or self-exploration, or facilitated with a mentor or a coach or a therapist or support, one could really kind of develop the clarity on what the self-identity is, and then that will help a lot kind of drive the story, or have a reference point to come back to when there's struggle, or when you bouncing back to what, and so maybe it's a good exercise to kind of define that to define one's self-identity. And now working with kind of just reflecting on the heart and ourselves and what we are. Obviously, every human being has a heart. Not every human being knows the power of their heart. It's not just an organ which is just pumping blood. It is an organ which is extremely intelligent, as intelligent, if not more intelligent than the brain. At least when they're working together, we get definitely more out of the brain and the rest of our body, because the heart, as an oscillator, is the most powerful oscillator in the body. And so just on a very simplistic kind of mechanism, the heart is ultimately driving the rest of the body. the heart is speaking more to the brain than the brain speaks to the heart. That's not philosophy. That's just what's happening. And so in that sense, if we can start to get an awareness and a familiarization with the power of our heart, then that can really shift our perspective and really shift everything else. And it's kind of maybe it's a road less traveled. You know, I know it wasn't in my life for the most part of my life. I really was out of my heart. And for the past, 5 years at least, I've been experimenting with what it feels like to really literally go in and feel as if I'm breathing through my heart, really go in and intentionally relate to that self-identity of the identity that I prefer, and in the higher emotional scale, let's say. And I've personally found resilience in that because I'm aware of how powerful my heart is, and I see that happening for my clients as well. So to answer your question, the heart is a very powerful organ, and it is kind of, the proof is in the pudding. It's not a conceptual kind of thing to work with necessarily, as it is a real kind of nuts and bolts, down to earth, like really literally feel what you feel, filter questions about life and yourself or even preferences through the filter of your heart focus, and see what happens.
Thank you. We lost Jan for a moment here. I hope she'll be back soon. Sometimes there are some technical problems, but I thought I would just take advantage of the moment then we've got a question from a person who's participating. Say more about what you mean by oscillator, please.
Oscillator. Well, let's see. Maybe we could look up what the word means. I mean, that might be helpful. But basically, kind of like as a power center, so a device for generating oscillatory electric currents or voltages by non-chemical means. So, oscillators they convert power and sort of direct power, and so the heart being the strongest oscillator in the body, the heart is the strongest organ, which is delegating power. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it is the most, it is the strongest power filter of our human life, really.
Okay, I'm really happy that you brought up a little bit earlier when you were talking about identity, because that's one of the things I think about when it comes to resilience. You mentioned like whether you're, I can't remember the roles you chose, like whether you're a husband or whatever. I think in terms of who I think I am, and somebody else who was watching said, who am I being? And that's an interesting question. Like, am I being weak? Do I think I'm weak? Because resilience for me is kind of like, what do I think I can and can't handle? And if my identity is, I can't handle this, then I am in the world as a person who can't handle challenges, for example. Mm-hmm. And Jan, I'm thinking when you were talking about how you learn to think, I mean, you use thought in a different way, and more connected, embodied, and the idea of identity and the idea of not being able to handle and not being connected. What is that? What do you think when I bring this up?
Yeah. Identity is really interesting, and it's a big part of resilience. I agree with you, because it comes back to our beliefs. But our beliefs are nothing more than stories we've told ourselves so often that we believe in them. That's all a belief is. So when we unpack a belief and start to look at it and what it does for us and how it benefits us and why we would want to keep it and would there be any benefit to letting it go, you can kind of, poke some holes in it and it loses some of its power. And then people maybe are interested in looking in a different direction. But the other big thing for me about identity is that all of these stories and beliefs that we create, these narratives in our mind, they're all just what I call storms in our head. They're just like weather patterns that we've dreamt up. But who we are, who our identity is the clear blue sky. We are the blue sky of awareness. Our thoughts are just the clouds and the thunderstorms and everything that passes through that awareness. And we can use our thought to dream up stories of being a victim of all those weather systems, or we can take on the identity as the observer of all of those things with free will and with choice and with the ability to decide which direction we take ourselves in and what identity we decide to have for ourselves. And you know, it doesn't matter who we work with, Miriam. When we ask people to look back over their life, everybody has 100% track record of coming through everything that they've already been through. You know, we all do, no matter what it was. Malcolm, you talked last week about waves, you know, that energy is in waves, it's not flat. And life is up and down. It's a contact sport. Our thoughts go up and down, and resilience is the same. Bobby asked, is resilience innate, or is it something that is it a muscle we have to build? And I think there's a bit of both, because I do believe resilience is innate to us. It's part of who we are. It's built into us. But if we're not looking in the direction of resilience, if we don't know how it works, if we don't know how we can help ourselves, that's the building of the muscle bit, is to, you know, to take your thinking in the direction of resilience and to understand how it works and how you can help yourself. So it is innate, but it's not just going to pop up out of thin air if you don't know where to look for it.
It's like duality.
Yeah.
You know, there's infinite oneness, but there's also duality within it.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. It's a kind of a yogi thing that I've developed over the years, that if you could look at life like creative tension, the duality is creative tension, because it's ultimately creating the moment. Each moment preceding the moment is creating the moment, you know. So if we can embrace life like creative tension, then it's just creative along the way. And so we're co-creative, you know, with that infinite, and we can kind of develop that sort of identification with life in general. And so nothing is necessarily good or bad or better or worse. It's just this ongoing unfolding and expansion of creative tension. You know, so the duality of the bad and the good or whatever is just actually kind of like a, you know, it is a creative tension that's just propelling us into the next moment of expansion. It's a very exalted way to grapple with that, but I've found it very helpful over the years.
Yeah. Well, we are creative beings.
That's right. And again, sort of what are we creating, or what do we prefer to create? Kind of goes back to this story. But, and you know, I don't want to hog the air in the room, but it's something that I had to do for myself. Finally give myself permission to have what I want and create who I wanted to be, and stop running away from what I thought was bad about me and trying to fix what was broken in me, and just had to just stop all that and just go, okay, well, who am I? Who do I want to be, and what do I want to do, and what do I want to have? And so, you know, that really worked for me. And that's what I help people do, basically. I think it's very healthy for all of us to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
And of course, the thought I had just went right out of my head.
Of course it did.
It was such a good thought. I'm just going to mention that the analogy with now that something else, I just mentioned the analogy with the sky and the weather is that as far as I understand, it's Pema Chodron that was the person who quoted that, or who made that first analogy. She said, you are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather.
Yeah.
And actually, when we're talking about identity and all, now it came back, the muscle that we train. Until we know how to train our muscles differently, we train them the way that we're used to train them. We strengthen the muscle, even if the way we train isn't necessarily helpful to us, or at least the best way to train. We train it until we learn something else, and then we train in a different way, and then that works for us. Yeah. And that's nice about resilience. We learn a different way to strengthen ourselves, and many different ways to strengthen ourselves, so that we can handle more of what life presents us, because life is going to keep presenting us stuff. And so the more we can sort of expand our existence and learn to meet those challenges and learn that, the stronger we are, the more resilient we are.
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of move over to Malcolm, because Malcolm has kind of a cool take. We had a little chat earlier this week about resilience, and you talked about a different kind of resilience than what's come up here so far, at least obviously. So talk to me about soul resilience and spirit resilience, Malcolm.
Well, I mean, that to me was a question that, because a lot of people there's a difference between the spirit and the soul. A lot of people believe that. Some people do, some people don't. So my question basically to self was, right, what's the connecting element between the spiritual resilience and your soul resilience, right? What's that thing, right? There has to be a thing between them. And for me, after we talked about it, I researched. I think the common denominator is the human experience. I think the human experience is what is the conduit between the two, right? Because you go through life, and your soul takes on whatever you're going through, right? Your soul goes through that aspect, or goes through whatever it is you're going through, the ups and downs, the emotional, the physical. It goes through that with you. The spiritual element of you is here, but it's not here, right? And your experience on earth expands or extends your spiritual journey. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So, So anyway, I'm still in the midst of trying to figure that part out. But I do believe that the human experience is that thing between the spiritual and the soul resilience.
Okay, because there are a lot of people that think soul and spirit is the same.
Right.
Some people think they're different, and some people think they're the same. And when I hear you talking, it sounds like you think they're different.
Yes, most
and
definitely.
Danielle, one of the other posse members, she actually mentioned that she suggested that soul is the individual spirit as opposed to spirit, which has no separation. That was her take on it. She mentioned that earlier this week. I noticed you're nodding, Jan. You agree
I
with
would
that?
agree with Danielle. To me, spirit is the oneness, the greater intelligence that creates, from which everything is created. Whereas our soul is the little piece of that spark of that comes with us into our human body, and that travels with us through life, the way Malcolm explained it. So it's a little thread from the greater tapestry.
That's a pretty picture.
And we're all woven together. We're all connected because we're all threads from the same tapestry.
Are you, is that also how you see it, Malcolm, when you talk about soul and spirit, that there's also that dimension?
Yes. I mean, we're, maybe the wording's different, but we're saying the same thing, more or less. And maybe a little bit of quirky things here and there that's maybe different because of upbringing, environment, or whatever. But we're all saying basically the same thing.
I think it's nice to know it's the same thing. We say it in different ways, and somebody needs to hear it one way or another way, and then it'll sort of go into their system, which is nice to have things from different perspectives, even though we agree with just different terms. But you also said, I don't know why I said but that's okay. And when we had our chat earlier this week, you also said, Malcolm, or at least I heard you say something about chakras and energy in connection with this soul and spirit resilience.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just me speaking, right? When you think about it, when I think about it, I'm not gonna say when anybody else think about it, but when I think about mental resilience, right, I'm thinking about the chakra that goes along with that. You also have the chakra that goes along with the heart, right? So you got to build that emotional, right? And then you have the chakra in the gut. So it's all part of that system. It's all part of the dynamic system. And you can't build, I don't believe that you can build one without the other, right? You have to go through a process of building them, in increments together. Because here's somebody that's that's mentally resilient, right? They're mentally resilient. Left brain, right brain, everything, they're resilient. But yet you can still get to them because they have no resilience in their heart, or they have some, but they're not in tune to that resilience of being resilient, right? When it comes to their emotions, when it comes to those types of things. So you still have that avenue that somebody can turn around and say, okay, I know I can't trick you into this, but I can make you feel into this in sort of a way, right? Yeah. So and then you got to look at the rest of the chakras and really look at what's connecting. and it's all a connecting energy, right? You know, people try to separate the brain and the heart and the gut and everything else, but you can't, because it's all one system, right? You know what I'm saying? If you take a person and you take their brain out of their head, you know what I mean? What's going to happen to the body? If you take a person, you take their heart out of their body, what's going to happen to the rest of the body? So you can't have one without the other. They're all one system. And you just got to learn how to navigate and work that system to be resilient, to, you know what I'm saying, for what you're going through or what you've been through in life.
Sadhu, you want to get in here? I heard him mention heart, and I heard him mention chakras and stuff. Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, over the years, it's been about 20 years or so that my exploration through the chakras and that kind of filter of awareness, and I think I've worked with them personally so long that I've just kind of integrated them into the story of who I say I am, you know, and so like what Malcolm was saying, if you can't separate the heart or the brain or any part of the whole, because then you don't have the whole, you know, and I agree with that. And so the chakras for me have taken on a place of just kind of awareness in general. And there are aspects of awareness that I can be aware of. You know, there's my relationship with myself, you know, my sort of self-identity. Then there's my relationship with others. You know, then there's my relationship with power and my relationship with unconditional love. You know, what am I speaking into reality? How am I seeing reality? What's my connection to the present moment? You know, and those are aspects of awareness. And just like what Malcolm was saying, like if you just take one, sort of isolate it and don't develop a relationship or a balance or harmony with the others, then it's you know, it can become lopsided. And I agree with that. And so the heart, it just, in my own personal experience, integrating the heart and the heart's power feels to me like it enhances the whole more than any of the other single parts I've kind of accessed to benefit the whole. I feel the heart is maybe like a hub that can, you know, once we start working with that, then it enhances all the other parts of the pie simultaneously.
I can actually hear it in your language, because I hear you saying, I feel often. And for me, that's a heart language. Although, I mean, a gut language can be, I feel as well. But then I would think it's a different kind of feel. The way I hear you, it sounds like it's heart. And I think as far as resilience goes, and these we've mentioned three centers, sort of, or at least Malcolm did, sort of generally, the mind or the brain, the heart, and the gut. I think sometimes some confusion as far as how resilient a person feels he or she is, or what kind of decisions to make and whether one can handle or not, is that the gut can say one thing, the heart can say something else, and the mind can say a third thing, and it's, what do I do? And then it becomes chaos and confusion. And for me, resilience, where resilience comes in, is understanding and having faith in, I can handle this chaos, I can handle this confusion. If I stay with it, something will come that will clear up the confusion. But if I go into fear, then I like sort of freeze, and then I can't really process. I get in the way of the connection and the communication between these centers and the chakras. That's my own personal experience, and also the way I understand these centers. I see you nodding, Jan, so I'm curious about. Malcolm will be right back, by the way, for people who are wondering. And there he is. But Jan, I see you nodding. What would you like to say?
Well, what's going through my mind as you're speaking is, you know, there's a Chinese word for conflict, and that's just what's occurring to me. And in English, it means opportunity and danger. And it just ties in with what you're speaking. You know, anytime we don't feel resilient, you know, there's generally some sort of chaotic energy in the body, or there's different messages or conflicting messages coming through. And if we take the view that it's going to be an obstacle or a challenge or it's negative, then that can add to the chaos. It's like putting fuel on the fire. Whereas if we can take the perspective or the view that it's an opportunity, and as you say, come home, slow down, be present, be with it. And the more that we're with whatever is going on, in my mind, it tends to balance itself out and a clear message comes through and order comes from the chaos.
Yeah.
But again, it's knowing what direction to take yourself in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of biology, at least old reptilian biology. If we perceive a danger, it's not unusual to want to get away from that. I mean, it's not unusual to want to get away from some sort of perceived pain.
Yeah.
And so it's, okay, I'm perceiving the pain, I'm perceiving the danger. Am I really in danger? Is this really a painful situation? Or am I actually remembering something or interpreting a situation? Am I thinking something? Have I come into a belief system about myself? Stopping up, getting quiet, and checking in with myself will likely help me realize that I'm actually just sitting in a chair and somebody's saying, unless somebody is actually running after me with a knife or something, then I'm generally not in a dangerous situation. Somebody might say something that I can interpret as dangerous somehow, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And the catastrophe isn't happening right now. It is in my thoughts as a potential future activity, but not right now. So what's actually happening right now? And if I can get to that, I can stop running or fighting or defending or staying in chaos, and then get in touch with all of these different centers and get the information I need. And that's a kind of resilience that you can train. And I think it's very important to bring that, into the fore. This is all trainable. There's a lot of people saying, okay, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. Yes, you can. You just have to know how and what.
Yeah.
It does help anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I love, Miriam, is, when we get into that fight or flight and all we want to do is run away. One thing that helped me along the way was run full speed into the present moment. Rather than running into the future or running into the past or running into your stories, run to the present moment as fast as you can or as slow as you can. But don't run away, run to, stay with it. Just stay with it. Yeah.
Right. What a lot of times, your fear of whatever the case is due to your other experiences in life, things you've already experienced in life, maybe a certain look. Because I know, my mom in church would look at me in a certain kind of way, and I knew that was danger, right? I might as well run like I'm running from a bear. But it's just certain things that will, your mind will automatically, or your brain, not your mind, your brain will automatically make these connections, between different, from the way somebody's looking, right? From the way somebody's speaking, from the way somebody's walking towards you or whatever, your brain automatically makes these connections, and it makes these connections, up to about 200 miles per hour. Right. So before you even know it, you done already had, 2,000 thoughts, right, about that particular person. And then we always bring up mirror neurons. We always, you always hear people bring up mirror neurons. And it's just, it's just, the way a person's looking, right? Their facial expressions. And, just that certain look that'll trigger a thought in you that will make you scared. Right.
Yeah.
So, and when it comes to being resilient to those types of things, right? Because, so I'm a Gen X, and we grew up, it was Halloween, it was Freddy Krueger, it was, all of these different, seriously hard. I mean, we thought back then that those were nothing compared to what they're looking at now. But, right, Amityville horror and all those things. But, so when you go into like a place, that looks something like that, that's the first thing that triggers in your mind, and all the different things that you saw in that movie, but then it's really nothing there, right? So, it's just about strengthening your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is the boss of the brain, right? That's where your intelligence comes from, right? Well, that's where your intelligence resides, right? But they come from life experiences, but they reside in these areas. So does your fears and your phobias. They reside, in your primitive brain and also in your emotional brain. So, so the point is, right, it takes 21 to 28 days to create a new habit. It takes 21 to 28 days to take a thought, right, of being resilient, going through the actions of being resilient for 21 days to be resilient. And there's a lot of different elements to that. But when you get into, when you get into different elements, when you get into the different elements of like resiliency, right, you get into self-awareness, you get into self-regulation, you get into positive emotions and mental toughness. All of that stuff, is am I talking too much?
No, it's good.
But anyway, all of those things are things that you have to have in order to get to that point of resiliency. But you also have to have, and this is where a lot of people go wrong, is social support, right? And I think it was Sadhu. I don't know if it was Sadhu or not. I think it was Sadhu. No, I don't know who it was. But anyway, it might have been Doc. But that said, you got to talk to somebody, right? Yeah. You got to talk to somebody. You got to, you got to talk through this process of being resilient. You got to talk to yourself through this process of being resilient, because the biggest thing you can do is what you tell yourself, right? That's the most important thing out of most of all of this, is what are you telling yourself? What are you saying, right? Because whatever it is you're saying to yourself, that's what's true. If you're saying that I'm not good enough to do something, then at that point it becomes true. If you say that I can't make it through this thing, right, at that point, you're absolutely correct. So, it's all about what you're telling yourself, having that self-awareness and being able to sit back and say, okay, look, I'm going to regulate me in this situation. I'm not going to allow me to, give out or give up or be burnt out or whatever the case is, right? Self-regulate yourself. And, it goes back to what I always say, what you focus on becomes your reality. If you focus on your problems, then your problems will remain. They're going to stay there because that's what you're focused on. That's what you're pouring energy into, right? But if you focus on a solution to the problems, you focus on a solution. This is the solution. I'm not worried about the problem. The problem is what the problem is, right? It's already here. Ain't nothing I can do, right? So I'm going to focus on the solution. How do I fix this? And that's where I stay focused at. That will become your reality. Yeah. In the long run, right? It might take 6 months, might take 3 months, might take 2 minutes. It don't matter. Yeah. Right? You just got to put in that energy towards it and stay focused.
I'm going to come in here a bit with, you have me sort of thinking about what we call metacognition. You're sort of being aware of your awareness. I'm having a thought about myself as something, for example. And I'm going to bring up something, I don't really talk too much about it, but I was held hostage for a while. And while in that situation, one of the things I had to do, or I chose to do, was to study the person and learn what he needed to hear so that I was treated well. What kind of habits he had. He had the habit of, for example, he would run the bath water for me and tell me I wanted to take a bath. He would say, you want to take a bath, and then he would run the bath water. And then I would move furniture in front of the door when he went out, and then I would take my bath. Right? So there was like patterns and things I learned to do and watch him very carefully. And when I got away, I didn't realize for quite a while that what I was doing was continuing that sort of vigilance when I was talking to people. I would be studying and thinking, like, what do they need to hear so that I could feel safe? I would be looking over my shoulder thinking, he's going to come and find me and take me back. And then I started, and this one actually went on for a long time without me realizing I was doing it, because I was so used to behaving that way in that world that when I got out, it was like I was still there. And the metacognition, that sort of being aware of being aware of what I'm telling myself, being aware of how I'm behaving, allowed me to release those kind of behaviors, and also the idea of myself as hostage. I had developed this sort of idea of myself, its belief system around what I could and couldn't do, how free, how dangerous things were. It became a whole sort of personality, and I could let it go. The more I learned to just notice, I'm having a thought about a situation. It's not real, it's a thought. And I can do something with a thought. Yeah. Right. So I just wanted to bring that in, like this whole idea of metacognition, this taking a step back and looking as if I'm in a film and watching myself as if, I'm doing that. I can actually choose not to do that. That's a really simple way of moving around this sort of and building this resilience.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
you mentioned, saying being held hostage, and that's not a good thing to be. But most people hold themselves hostage.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Most people hold themselves hostage, in the name of love, in the name of money, in the name of whatever, right? And it's just as bad to hold yourself hostage as having somebody else hold you hostage. And it's being, when we're talking about being resilient, right? It's being open to understanding that I am holding myself hostage, right, in this situation, and trying to figure out ways, whether you got to go through Sadhu or you go through Miriam or you go through whoever, right, to get that support that you need. Because sometimes the biggest issue for me, right, and the people that I've dealt with, one of the biggest issues is lack of information on how, because, the how doesn't really matter, because, your why might not be big enough for the why to even count, if that makes sense to y'all. Right. So, so you got to go through that process, process of gathering that information and getting information to them so that they can understand that, okay, yes, I am holding myself hostage. Yes, I am holding, I am holding myself back. Sadhu's not holding me back. Miriam's not holding me back. Jan's not holding me back. It's me that's holding me back. And there's a lot of different things there when it comes to be resilient that people have to work through. Right. Because some people have gone through life, situations where they've been battered, they've been bruised, they've been, raped, they've been whatever. And that part of resilience, they don't realize that they are resilient because you made it through it. Right. And you're still continuing they don't get that part yet. But once you get them to get that part and understand that part, then they become more dominant. They become more active.
Thank you for making my point way clearer than I managed to do, because I was thinking about the whole thing of you don't have to have been held hostage to experience yourself as a hostage. We hold ourselves hostage. So thank you very much for that. I'm noticing Sadhu is leaning forward, and I have this sneaky suspicion you have something wise to say.
I don't know how wise it is, but it's something that I just want to share because it's what's coming up. Is I know that in my own personal journey, I had a lot of emotional, physical, mental, PTSD from my childhood. And so since about my 20s, I've been working with that, different therapists, different modalities, breathing exercises, different healings, and all this sort of stuff. And then my recent studies in the past, let's say 5 years of the heart-brain coherence and all of that, apparently in a heart-brain, when heart-brain coherence, when you're in a coherent state, you have this higher heart rate variability, which is also, by the way, kind of a measure of health or resiliency, because they use that word a lot in the heart-brain coherence kind of field or lexicon. And so this resilience comes up a lot because when our heart and brain are coherent, which means when we're in a positive emotion, let's say when we're in a kind of an intentional, conscious, positive emotion, like feeling love towards someone else, feeling appreciation for life, or feeling something that made us or is making us very joyful, when we can be consciously in that moment, it's not a relaxed state. It's a very hyper alert and hyper aware and active awareness, because you have to be present. And so, but there's also an openness and relaxation happening at the same time. So both those things are actually kind of like really feeding into one another. You're highly alert and highly active and awake, but also highly open and relaxed. And so what happens to the amygdala is the amygdala is being reset in that moment. And so the amygdala, apparently what it does, its function through development, through developmental stages of growing up from a fetus, basically, the amygdala applies emotional significance to things. The lamp, or a female figure, or a male dominant authority figure, or friend, or foe, or enemy, or abuser, or trust, trust, whatever. It applies emotional significance to our reality. And so from about 0 to 7, apparently we all are kind of in this developmental state that lets us absorb everything into our subconscious so that we can figure it out and make sense of it, kind of develop a self-identity. And so that identity from 0 to 7 gets kind of locked in. You know, so the 7-year-old or the 5-year-old that had this or that good or bad, life experience and emotional referencing kind of carries over into the 20-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 50-year-old, still walking in reality as a 50-year-old person, having the self-identity of a 5-year-old, placing emotional significance to their world. And so when a female dominant figure comes in, there's either fear or loathing, or there's trust, depending on the emotional set point that the amygdala applied to that reference. And so in a heart-brain coherent state, the amygdala is actually getting reset. It's getting reset to the point where new emotional significance is being appointed to different things. And so the neurochemical pathways and the neurochemistry of that deep appreciation in the moment is actually rewiring the neurological default of the self-identity. And so therefore, if anybody on the face of the earth, this is not just kind of like my philosophy about this, but anyone feels sincere, authentic appreciation, joy, gratitude, love, in themselves, and they do it consistently, that will then become a neurological set point. It will become a default to be that wired to see what one can appreciate about life instead of perceiving a fear or a threat.
Yes. Thank you so much. That is such a great place to stop, because we kind of are running out of time, or have run out of time. I don't know if we have a minute to sort of say something, some final words, but it's such a wonderful place to finish on that note. And also, I have such a strong impression that we're going to need a resilience part 3.
I think
at least something on this particular, because going into the amygdala, all of a sudden my brain's going, yes, but there are 2 amygdalas. There's the left brain amygdala and the right brain amygdala. And we don't have a chance to talk about that either, and et cetera, et cetera. So the Presence Posse will be holding these roundtable talks every Monday and sometimes on Thursdays. So follow along on our Facebook page or our public group, the Presence Posse, and you will get the schedule and also the topics for each next roundtable talk. Malcolm, do we have any time at all for people to say a last 30 seconds of something about themselves?
Everybody wants to do. Yeah.
Everybody wants to.
I'll hold up a sign.
Okay, so we have, and somebody said, Bobby says, and parts 4, 5, and 6, as you said also, Jan. Sorry we didn't get to all the comments, and that's something we can also build on for further Presence Posse talks. So thank you all also for all of your comments and for participating. Jan, you've got 30 seconds to say something about yourself as a conclusion.
Well, I think one of the themes I'm hearing today, and it resonates with me, is we all need a guide by our side to help us when we're struggling with resilience. But the work that I do is to help you find your own guide on the inside. So a guide on the outside to help you find your guide on the inside. And if anybody is struggling, I'd be happy to do a 30-minute chat with anyone. You can find me on Facebook. Thank you.
Malcolm?
Man, resiliency is innate, but you know what I'm saying, there are muscles that you have to work, right? There are things that need to be done mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, you know what I'm saying, to help you strengthen your resiliency against whatever it is you're going through or been through. Right, a lot of people fight with what they've been through, that they can't get to where they need to be. Right, so there's and once again, you may need help to find that inner, person, that inner energy to get you there, or that physical. Physically. So either way it go, there's help out here for you. There's coaches, there's mentors, there's people out here to help you. Get in contact. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Sadhu.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Posse. So I just wanted to let people know that this page and this group is compiled of people that are here for you. And so if someone resonates with you, find out what they've got going on to either share more information with you, free resources, something like that, because a lot of those things are going to be floating around here on the page. We'll be providing free resources, and links that you can find out more about who we are and what we're up to and what we have to offer and how we can serve and support you.
Everybody said so many wonderful things, and I can sort of say yes to all of them. So what can I add? I work a lot with people who have experienced trauma in different forms. I work with couples and groups also. I also have done research on and developed a method for working with people who feel stuck. And this idea of resilience is, I cannot break out of this pattern. And maybe you think you can't. And so I work with that. I have developed a way to work with that, and it happens really, really quickly. So they're more than welcome to contact me and talk a little bit about what that is and how we can do it, whether it's physically present, I'm in Norway, or online. And as Sadhu mentioned, we have resources we'll be putting on the page. And we have some free resources as well. So you're welcome to have a look at those and contact any of us. The posse is 9 people, and get to know all of us. We'll be back either on Thursday or next Monday. Follow the page and you'll see the link and what the topic is and everything. And we welcome you back. Malcolm is signaling me. I'm not sure whether you're saying shut up or whether you want to say something.
Nah, I mean, keep going.
No. Okay. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for participating and for your comments. And we look forward to being with you again. And thank you from the Presence Posse.
Ciao.
Bye all.
Bye. See you next time.